On the broadcast tonight, as defense officials from South Korea and the U.S. conclude their two-day semi-annual defense talks in Seoul, Washington's chief nominee to head the U.S. forces Korea says that he supports the 2015 handover as planned. A monument honoring the hundreds of thousands of women who were forced into sexual slavery by the Japanese military during World War II is unveiled in a city in the United States. Now, this is the first memorial of such kind to be built outside of Korea. And Bradley Manning is a criminal but not a traitor. A military judge makes that distinction clear in finding the 25-year-old Army private not guilty of the most serious charge against him, while convicting him of a long list of lesser crimes. This is Early Edition at 6. It is 2 a.m. in California, 11 in Paris, and 6 on a Wednesday evening here in Seoul. Welcome to Early Edition at 6. I'm Moon Gun-young.
And I'm Daniel Chen. Thank you for tuning in. The U.S. wants to go ahead with its operational control transfer as planned.
Military officials from South Korea and the U.S. continue the second day of their semi-annual defense talks in Seoul today, and they wrap that up. The nominee for the head of U.S. forces in Korea had this to say.
He supports the U.S. government's plans to hand over wartime operational control to Seoul in 2015 as scheduled, despite Seoul's calls for flexibility. Our Kim Young-gil has today's top story.
Lieutenant General Curtis Scaparotti said at his Senate confirmation hearing on Tuesday that he plans to follow through with the scheduled timeline for the wartime operational control transfer in December 2015 if he is appointed to lead the U.S. Forces Korea.
Yes, I do agree with the timetable. It is a bilateral agreement, Strategic Alliance 2015, to turn over operational control by December of 2015.
The Lieutenant General said moving forward with the plan will pave the way for Korea's enhanced combat readiness, but emphasized that the South Korean military will have to meet a detailed set of requirements by the agreed-upon date. The question of whether South Korea should retake operational control of its troops is a controversial issue in the country. Seoul was scheduled to retake wartime operational control of its troops in April 2012, but asked for a delay in 2010. Seoul asked for another delay to 2015 earlier this year. South Korean military officials believe it may be difficult for the military to be fully ready for the transition by the target date. Senior South Korean and U.S. military officials discussed the Afghan transfer issue during a semi-annual round of defense talks in Seoul Tuesday and Wednesday. The talks focused on military and security issues with the aim of providing a strong deterrent against North Korea. The defense chiefs plan to meet again in October, though the two sides will continue to discuss the issues through various channels. Meanwhile, the Nodong Shinmun, the official paper of the North's ruling Workers' Party, reported Wednesday that South Korea's desire to delay the Afghan transfer shows it intends to invade the North. The paper also said it is a sign the South is giving up its sovereignty. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, Panamanian authorities combing through a North Korean ship they seized earlier this month say they've come across an additional cache of military hardware, along with the missile radar system and 2 fighter jets they found in pieces last week. A dozen fighter jet engines and several military vehicles were uncovered. Our Han Daeun has the latest.
Panamanian investigators said on Tuesday local time that they've discovered 12 motors for MiG-21 fighter jets and 5 military vehicles on the seized North Korean cargo ship.
In these containers, we found what seems to be jet engines for MiG-21s. We are talking about 12 jet engines in the containers we have opened so far, as well as a vehicle that seems to be some type of control center, used to direct batteries of radars and missiles.
This comes a week after Panama President Ricardo Martinelli told reporters that 2 MiG-21 fighter jets, originally produced by the Soviet Union in 1950s, and 2 units of missile radar systems had been found on the vessel. The ship, named Cheongcheongang, was en route from Cuba to North Korea when it was seized in Panama during an inspection. Local investigators say the weapons were hidden under sacks of brown sugar. Panamanian authorities are currently inspecting all of the seized military equipment while they wait for an inspection team from the UN Security Council to arrive on site.
As acting foreign minister, I've been speaking with UN Ambassador Thalasinos in New York, who at the same time has been speaking with representatives from that organization. They've given us a date, which is the 12th of August, so that we may be able to work.
Regarding the 35 North Korean crew members that are being held in detention, President Martinelli has said that diplomatic negotiations will need to take place before they can return to the North. Local officials say they face up to 6 years in prison. 한단, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, private humanitarian aid groups in South Korea began sending food and medicine for children in the north this Wednesday. This comes as Seoul awaits an answer from Pyongyang on its final proposal for talks on reopening their joint business park. Arirang News Unification Ministry correspondent Hwang Sung-hee reports.
5 South Korean civic groups that received approval from the South Korean government earlier this week began sending humanitarian aid to North Korea on Wednesday. The organizations will send around $1.4 million worth of medicine and food for young North Korean children throughout next month. Recent surveys by the United Nations show more than 1 in 4 North Korean children under the age of 5 suffer from chronic malnutrition. Figures also point to rising infant mortality rates in the impoverished state in recent years. The current rate is more than 6 times higher than that of the South. Seoul's seemingly generous gesture comes a matter of days after the two Koreas walked away from talks on reopening their jointly run factory zone in the north. South Korean President Park Geun-hye has stressed humanitarian aid to North Korea will be dealt with separately from political issues. But the government's plan to approve private shipments of aid was announced as South Korean Unification Minister Ryu Gil-jae made what he called the last offer for talks to the north regarding the Kaesong industrial complex. North Korea has yet to respond. The two Koreas have held 6 rounds of working-level talks this month on ways to reopen the business park, but Pyongyang has not provided the security guarantees the South has been looking for to restart operations there. The factory zone has been shuttered for more than 3 months since the North unilaterally withdrew all of its workers amid an escalation of inter-Korean tensions. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
A memorial honoring thousands of young women who were forced into sexual slavery by Japanese soldiers during World War II was unveiled in a city in California. This despite ridiculous opposition from Japan. Our Kim Min-ji reports.
Glendale City on Tuesday unveiled a monument honoring the victims of Japan's wartime use of sexual slaves, becoming the first memorial to be set up overseas. The statue is a replica of the peace monument Korean civic leaders set up across the road from the Japanese embassy in Seoul. As the monument was unveiled, a smile appeared on the face of Kim Bok-dong, a victim of sexual slavery.
Before we die, Japan needs to come forward and offer an official apology and reparation.
After a great deal of persuasion from Korean community groups, the monument was installed in Glendale City Park as part of efforts to remember the inhumane acts committed by Japanese soldiers during the war.
The campaign was set up thanks to the American people and their contributions.
However, the installment did not go smoothly as the Japanese government and Japanese American residents strongly opposed the establishment. Hundreds of citizens wrote opposition emails, while the Consular General in Los Angeles even sent an opposition letter saying Japan has provided sufficient reparations to its war victims. Glendale City, which has designated July 30th to honor the so-called comfort women, said the installment is meaningful as the residents now understand the correct history.
This is for them This is one to educate the public about what took place, but also a tribute and a monument to what they had to endure.
The statue will represent the violation of human rights and horrific acts committed by the Japanese military. 김민지, Arirang News.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life. Talking with you on air and online. Connecting you with heroes and experts to help you understand the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best with Moon Gun-young and Daniel Che on Early Edition at 6.
Now shifting gears to the economy, Korea's import prices rose by... Bradley Manning is a criminal, but not a traitor. That's the verdict the 25-year-old former U.S. soldier received for leaking intelligence. So he will most definitely go to prison and for a very long time. But Manning has been acquitted of charges of aiding the enemy, the most serious charge he faced for leaking classified military and diplomatic documents to the WikiLeaks website. Arirang News Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Bradley Manning was found not guilty of aiding the enemy, but he has been convicted of 20 lesser charges. On Tuesday, 25-year-old Manning, who was arrested in 2010 for leaking hundreds of thousands of classified documents to the WikiLeaks website, was found guilty of charges including espionage, theft, and computer fraud. He could face a maximum of up to 136 years behind bars. Human rights group Amnesty International argued the charge of, quote, aiding the enemy was not evident in this case due to a lack of evidence that Manning intentionally tried to harm his country. Manning supporters think the verdict was too tough on the former U.S. Army soldier.
People like Bradley can't stand up and tell us what our government is doing when it's wrong, ostensibly wrong, then we're in a lot of trouble.
Among the materials Manning sent to WikiLeaks were videos of a 2007 attack by an American Apache helicopter that killed a dozen people in Iraq, including some Reuters news staff. It also includes battlefield reports in Iraq and Afghanistan and diplomatic cables between Washington and other embassies containing state secrets. Manning's collection of documents were the catalyst of the WikiLeaks website and boosted the profile of its founder, Julian Assange.
It is a dangerous precedent and an example of national security extremism. It is a short-sighted judgment that cannot be tolerated, and it must be reversed.
Assange called for a full acquittal for Manning and said his case may affect similar cases like the one related to Edward Snowden, the CIA whistleblower who leaked details of several top-secret U.S. mass surveillance programs to the press. The military judge for Manning's case, Colonel Denise Lin, said she would release a written statement of her ruling at a later date. Manning's sentencing hearing starts on Wednesday. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Korea's largest conglomerate, Samsung Electronics, keeps renewing its profit and sales record. But this doesn't seem to trickle down on the nation's economy. One big reason Samsung is making many profitable products overseas, and Korea accounts for less and less of the company's investment plans. Our Hwang Ji-hye has the details.
Samsung Electronics has announced major investment plans after the tech giant last week posted a record profit of $8.5 billion in the second quarter of this year. It plans to spend a record 24 trillion won, or roughly $21 billion to expand and update its production facilities this year, up around $1 billion from last year.
Samsung is increasing investments in next-generation growth engines. This will prompt other Korean large companies to promote investment.
The problem, however, is that these investments aren't likely to boost economic activities in Korea in a major way. That's because the bulk of these new spendings will be focused on expanding its factories overseas, particularly in China. Samsung allocated 1/3 of the $21 billion investment spending for this year to build a flash memory chip factory at Xi'an, China, and an additional $3 billion to build a display panel factory in another Chinese city. And Korea accounts for less than a quarter of the company's investment plan this year. Experts say with Samsung and many of local exporters building their new factories overseas, their prosperity will have less and less impact on the local economy. 황지혜, Arirang News.
Taekwondo has long been at the forefront of promoting Korean sports and culture overseas. Few would argue that it's at the root of the Korean wave. Today, more than 200 countries enjoy this Korean martial arts turned sporting event. And in this second part of our series on Azerbaijan, Song Ji-sun tells us how the government there has helped foster Taekwondo and its athletes.
Azerbaijan is better known to Korea for its natural resources, but it's got greater connections with Seoul, one of them being the Korean martial art of Taekwondo. Around 2,000 Azerbaijanis are active Taekwondo practitioners around the nation, and Gabala, a mountain city located 4 hours away from the capital Baku, has extra facilities to help the locals hone their skills. The city of Gabala, a popular tourism destination in Azerbaijan, is turning itself into a Taekwondo hub, attracting prospective athletes from within the region and other parts of the country. The city even has a sport hotel specifically designed to cater to athletes. This unprecedented facility is also home to Azerbaijan's national team.
Taekwondo is an increasingly popular sport here in Azerbaijan, and we anticipate more young athletes here to achieve victory in the sport. We also send them to Korea and bring our coaches along to improve their skills.
And of course, local children are the first to benefit from these offers. Although mostly beginners, they dream of being the one to win Azerbaijan's first Olympic gold medal in the sport.
I started Taekwondo 2 months ago. I like working out, and I think Taekwondo is good for my health.
I want to start by winning the European Championships, then the Worlds, and eventually the Olympics.
In its bid to develop more Olympic athletes in Taekwondo and in other sports, and eventually hosting international sporting events, Azerbaijan is also building sports infrastructure like this Olympic complex in major cities around the country. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News, Gabala.
Well, it is one of the most highly anticipated Korean films of the year, and it opened today instead of tomorrow here in Korea.
Right, that's correct. Korean director Bong Joon-ho's Snowpiercer has grabbed the attention of film lovers not only here in Korea, but in many countries around the world for its gripping plot and stunning cinematography. That's what we hear, at least. For more, our cultural correspondent Park Ji-won joins us live from the News Center. Hello there, Ji-won.
Good evening. Well, you are right about the amount of attention the film is getting. The film is supposed to open tomorrow, August 1st, but it opened a day earlier thanks to the fierce support of director Bong's fans. That's unprecedented for Korean film. The film will be shown on movie screens in 167 countries, a record for Korean films. It also has the largest budget of any film in Korean cinema history, coming in at roughly $40 million. However, the film has already recovered half of its costs through the sales of the distribution rights. Let's take a look. 7 years ago, director Bong Joon-ho first read a French graphic novel about the last human survivals on a train during a new ice age and imagined adapting it for film. He did, and the film Snowpiercer finally hits the big screen this summer. Director Bong Joon-ho, who has in previous works examined the nature of human beings in extreme circumstances, goes even farther in this film to delve into human nature and the socio-economic divide. The film has strong cinematic imagery and a dark but intriguing plot that keeps audiences on the edge of their seats.
Well, the film itself is an allegory for class warfare.
The film's leading actors and actresses were in Seoul to celebrate the film's world premiere, appearing at a press conference and a red carpet event with a host of Korean celebrities.
Well, it's quite an international cast there, including the former Captain America and the former Billy Elliot among the list. And of course, Koreans excited to see Song Kang-ho in one of the big roles. It's quite a nice blend of talent in there.
Yes, although Bong has received critical acclaim at International Film Festival for his previous films. Given that this is his first English language film, it's amazing to such an extraordinary cast. Well, during the press conference in Seoul earlier this week, I asked the actors and actresses what made them to decide to participate in this film.
What made me decide to be in a Bong Joon-ho film? Bong Joon-ho. Not only his work, but really the person, and to work within the heart of this great Korean cinema that you have with this person, who, as far as I'm concerned, is at the very pinnacle of all world cinema.
When I first read the script, I had not seen any of Director Bong's films, and having watched them all, I was so blown away and so impressed. They were so good. And it was just such an exciting notion to kind of broaden my horizon as an actor and as a person, to work with people who aren't just, who approach the craft differently than I do. And it was a really educational experience.
Well, Jiwon, not only the cast, but this will be the first Korean film to be given wide release in the U.S. market. And, you said earlier that the distribution rights had already been sold to 167 countries. That's more than impressive.
Yes. Well, his previous films like The Host and Mother were released in several countries, but they were mostly art house screenings. So this is the first time a Korean film will be given such a wide release in so many countries. So let's hear what director Bong had to say about it.
I am excited and thrilled. Although I can't imagine how audiences in the different countries will react to the film, I believe everyone will be able to relate to the story in some way. The film deals with the divide between the rich and poor, the powerful and the powerless, which exists in almost every country. It's a universal theme, and I believe audiences will be able to relate to it no matter what their individual circumstances are.
This has been a great year for Korean films. We had two Korean directors before Bong Joon-ho making their directorial debut in Hollywood. Unfortunately, both these movies, Last Stand and Stoker, receive somewhat lukewarm reviews from international critics. So, for Snowpiercer, what are the international critics outside of Korea saying about the movie, Jiwon?
Yes, critics have largely already praising Bong for holding on to his distinctive visual style and flair for storytelling with this film.
The international reception has been very, very strong. I and the other international critics have just appreciated the bold vision that Bong has put forth on screen. Some people were a little worried because of after the poor performance of The Last Stand and Stoker, two films that I didn't dislike, but I could understand that they were not particularly successful. But any reservations were quickly brushed aside as I was lucky enough to see it at a press screening last Monday, and I found it to be a truly a phenomenal film, and I think it will easily surpass the other two in terms of a Korean film on the international market.
And I also would like to note that another Korean blockbuster, Mr. Go, is opening in theaters in China and Southeast Asian countries, including Singapore, Thailand, and India this summer as well. The Korean Film Council says the success of films like these has prompted more producers and major entertainment companies in Korea to work on film projects that target the global market. And it shows that the Korean film industry has grown its capacity to make films that will appeal to audiences around the world. Also, I hope... Okay, that's it.
Well, hopefully more so in the future. Thank you, Jiwon, for that.
That was our Arirang News cultural correspondent Park Ji-won with an analysis of a new film opening in theaters today, Snowpiercer. And now it's time to get a check on the weather conditions with our Hannah Kim. And I think it's safe to say we're in the dead of summer right now, which means I'm guzzling a lot of water these days.
Well, Daniel, that's a good thing because you should always keep yourself hydrated. Now, if you think it's hot in Seoul, you do not want to go south. We have heat wave advisories on Jeju Island and in the Gyeongsang provinces.
Right, I don't want to go south. I mean, our temperatures highs here have been way above the 30s this week, and it's really the humidity that can be very suffocating at times.
Absolutely, but on a brighter note, the rain has cleared up in the south, and just keep in mind that we do have passing showers, light rain later in the evening in parts of the central provinces. Unfortunately, it looks like we'll have more precipitation over the weekend and until early next week, but forecasters are saying that the monsoon season will officially end next Wednesday. If we take a closer look at tomorrow's forecast, brace yourselves for another hot day. Seoul will start off the morning at 24 and reach 33 in the afternoon. Meanwhile, cities in the south like Daegu and Gwangju will peak at 34 and 31 degrees respectively. Down on Jeju Island, we'll have mostly sunny skies and our highs will hit 33. Daejeon will jump to 32, while Dokdo tops out relatively lower at 26. Well, that's all I have for you today. I'm Hannah Kim, and back to you guys.
Thanks for that, Hannah, and that's all from us for this hour. Thank you for watching. This has been Daniel Choi.
And I'm Moon Gon-young. Thank you, as always, for being here with us. Hope you have a wonderful rest of the evening and hopefully cool one. And we'll see you right back here same time tomorrow. Good night.